try it again. Log out and then click the link again and see what happens.
Arcata, Humboldt State University, local businesses and members of the community working to make Arcata a more inclusive and welcoming environment for people of color. This working group was initiated to help develop an environment of racial awareness, discussion, and learning opportunities within the local business community. And at any point after this is over, or if you'd like more information, please feel free to email me at chuckjpowell@gmail.com. So at this point, we'd like to do some really short introductions. I want to be mindful, we have a lot of people, which is great. And we really want to finish by 5:30 or so. So if you can take just a minute and introduce yourself and your business affiliation, if any, how you might identify racially. And then if you would, please, what brought you to the space today, you could put in the chat. What do you hope to take away? Please put in the chat. And what experience do you have with diversity, equity, and inclusion? And we might just do a quick group check-in with that. And it's just, people may say, I have a lot, I have a little bit, I have nothing. So we have Molly, would you mind maybe calling on people?
Yeah, I'll go around and call on people. So
thanks.
Just keep yourself muted, and then if you hear your name, you can unmute and address the questions that Chuck has here on the screen. So I'll start. I'm Molly Steele, Executive Director of the Arcata Chamber of Commerce, and I identify as white. And I'm really excited to be here to learn and create a more inclusive environment for our whole community. So I'm going to start with, actually, some people don't have names. So I'm going to start with Aaron, because you have your name here on your screen. Aaron from Wild Berries.
I'm Aaron. I am from Wild Berries Marketplace. I identify as white. And, Chuck told me about this webinar today, so I thought it was going to be useful to attend with our human resource manager, who's somewhere out there. It's good to be here.
Thanks, Aaron. Nice to have you here. Carol.
Yeah, I'm Carol Vandermeer, and I identify as white, and I am the interim executive director at the Trinidad Coastal Land Trust. But I also sit on the boards of Friends of the Dunes and Food for People. So I think this could be useful for all those hats.
Thanks, Carol. Carrie.
Hi, my name is Carrie Tully. I am the Administrative and Development Director for the North Coast Environmental Center. I work with Save California Salmon, and I'm on the steering committee for the Humboldt State University's Native American Studies Sovereignty Lab and Cultural Workspace. I identify as white, and I'm here because, using my privilege to promote ideas of understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to all of my roles. And I think that it's really important that we use our positions of power to be able to bring these topics up and kind of broaden our awareness within our greater circles. And I'm really excited to be here with you guys today.
Thanks, Carrie. Nice to see you. Cati, I know you're one of our hosts today, but why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Again, my name's Catarina or Cati Gallardo, and I identify as mixed. I am Mexican and white, and I'm here to help facilitate this conversation. I'm really excited to see some familiar faces and also some new faces involved in this work. And I have been studying diversity, equity, inclusion for about 10 years, and I have been involved with Equity Arcata for about 1.5 years now. And I'm, yeah, I know, right? And I'm thrilled to be involved.
Oh my God. Oh.
Thank you, Cati. Go ahead and mute yourself if not muted. And sorry, I lost track here. Donette. Donette, are you out there?
Danette?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Danette. I'm with the City of Arcata, and I'm also a member of the Equity Arcata organization. And I'm here to support and just be here for Cati and Chuck, and just really appreciate all of the work that they have been doing so steadily and continually. And they are wonderful members of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Donette. Thank you. Dave Turner.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Turner. I identify as white. I have a human resource consulting business. And so I'm here to kind of learn more about diversity, equity, inclusion, and how I might be able to help my clients improve their work experience in that regard.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie Egger, and I'm with the Humboldt County Association of Governments. I identify as white, and I am here to learn.
Thanks, Debbie. Jeff.
Hey, I'm Jeff Turner. I'm the Director of Sales at Cocatat, and I'm just looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a senior payroll personnel specialist with the Department of Health and Human Services, County of Humboldt. I identify as mixed, mostly Native Hawaiian and Asian, and I'm here to bring back more information back to DHHS about just diversity training and things like that as possibilities or even just within our hiring. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Jody.
Hi, I'm Jody. I am the outreach coordinator for Timber Ridge, and I'm excited about today. I'm looking for ways to improve our work experience as well as be more inclusive in our workplace.
Thanks, Jody. Luna.
Hi, I'm Luna Latimer. I'm the director of the Mid-Klamath Watershed Council, which is a nonprofit in far eastern Humboldt County. I appreciate the opportunity to join you all today, and I use she, her pronouns.
Thank you, Luna. Chuck, can you stop sharing your screen maybe while we finish up these introductions, so we can see everybody? There we go. I don't see Chuck on there, but anyways, okay. Thank you, Luna. Sorry, no, I'm gonna say this wrong. Nayeli. Sorry for mispronouncing, not knowing how to pronounce your name. Nayeli?
I don't think Nayeli has the ability to say hello. She's our human resource manager at Wildberries Marketplace.
Thanks, Aaron. Nayeli. Well, welcome, Nayeli. We're happy you're here. Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Lockmiller, and I'm Director of Operations at Cocatat. I'm also on the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I'm here because Cocatat has quite a diverse workforce, and we are really working hard to try to improve the equity and inclusion of that workforce in our company, especially at the upper levels of the company. And so we're hoping to learn. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I lost track of where I was going down this list. Sean.
Hello, my name is Sean Robertson. I'm the fire chief for Humboldt Bay Fire in Eureka. And I'm here just to get some more insight on building more equity in our organization.
Great, thanks, Sean. Nice to have you. Adam.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I was late joining. I was having a little trouble getting on via my phone. I am with Cocatat in Arcata, California, and I identify as white. And I imagine that both Jeff and Mark probably explained our organization, so I probably don't need to build on that.
Thank you. I like your profile picture.
Thank you.
Steve.
Well, hi, I'm Steve McCaney. I'm on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I also work for the Eureka office of GHD. We're about a 10,000 person global engineering and environmental sciences firm. And the company does a pretty good job at trying to build the equity within the company. And it's a really big emphasis. And so I want to be here to learn more about it.
Thank you, Steve. See, Esme just joined us. Chuck, will you tell Esme what all the things we're saying? I don't maybe remember the list.
So Esme, we're just asking who you are, what business you are affiliated with, and what you're interested in learning or getting out of the discussion today.
Yes, so I'm Esme Dominguez. I'm the business developer for Express Employment Professionals, and I'm all new to this, so I'm just here to like listen and watch and hopefully take a lot of great information.
Thanks, Esme. Thanks for coming. Somebody's here with a phone number, 407. You can rename yourself. That would be helpful, but if you want to introduce yourself as well.
I believe you're speaking with me. This is Michelle Bisgrove. I'm the Human Resources Manager for Cocatat. And I believe that both Mark and Jeff also dove into why we're here. And also I identify as white.
Thank you. If I missed
Thank you.
Now's your chance to speak up. Hopefully we got everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here, and we'll have Chuck begin screen sharing again, and we'll get started on the presentation.
Okay, can you all see that then?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So we're going to start off with what is, oh, actually, Cati, this is your slide.
All right, let me take it away then. So a lot of folks may not be familiar with what diversity, equity, inclusion really is. And we wanted to make sure that you have that definition, because in this kind of work, it's important to have a shared language. So as far as diversity goes, it's not people who are diverse, but it's teams and companies that must be diverse to create that inclusive environment. So a person is not diverse. Referring to a person as diverse would only make sense if we were all the same, but we're not the same. Referring to a person as diverse is increasingly used as a code for people who belong to groups considered non-dominant or those with historically less privilege. So it's important to know that going into this work. And as far as equity goes, treating everyone equally still maintains inequities. So there's a lot of confusion sometimes about equality and equity. So it's important to start with equity-inspired design. And while they're used interchangeably often, equity and equality mean very different things and lead to different results. So when we treat everyone equally, everyone's treated the same. But when you treat everyone equitably, you focus on the individual needs of those folks, because everyone essentially does have different needs. So it's important to know that going into this conversation that we're actually wanting to have everyone succeed based on what their needs are. And in a diverse workplace, differences exist and people require support in different ways. So equity has us acknowledge that everyone has these different needs and experiences and opportunities. And folks from marginalized groups often have more barriers to overcome when accessing resources and opportunities than from those of the dominant or more privileged groups. So in a diverse organization, equity-inspired design identifies those barriers and inequities, and it helps elevate the folks on the margins to produce equitable outcomes. So that's looking at equity as it is. And then we'll move on to the next slide. So inclusion is something that doesn't happen. It's something that we actually have to design for. It's something we have to prepare for, and it's something we actively have to think about in the workplace. So an organization can be diverse without being inclusive, because inclusion is not a natural consequence of a team or organization. And people often say diversity is an invitation to a party, where inclusion is being asked to the dance. So being asked to do something doesn't actually mean that you're being included or being inclusive. The inclusivity comes when it comes to the value. Hi, honey. My daughter just came home, so say hello.
I pee my pants.
Oh gosh, okay, well, get in the shower. Well, and so thanks, honey. Okay, so as we move on to that, having a diverse workplace means that our differences do exist, and inclusion takes it forward to ask how everyone, from team members to end users, can feel valued. And mom life is real, everyone. And so what is diversity and equity and inclusion? So we're going to play this short video for you all to watch to give you a little bit of deeper knowledge on this subject. So take that away, Chuck.
I'll teach diversity. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our learning series. I am Dr. C.I., the CEO and founder of a company called Diversity, and this is our second season of our learning series. Did y'all miss me? Yeah? All right, good. I miss y'all too. And I'm happy to be back to share knowledge again with y'all in this space around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I also call that DEI. Now, speaking of DEI, here we are in our first episode where we're going to break down again the components of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what those really mean. So what is diversity? Diversity is about representation, okay? Do you see the seriousness in my face? Diversity is about the collective mixture of human beings and the identities that they have coexisting within a space. So when I say identities, I mean your race, your age, your gender, your sex, your disability, etc. And diversity is not just about your visible identities. It's also about your invisible identities. It might be your behaviors, etc. All the things that make us who we are fall under the umbrella of diversity, okay? Now, you can't have a conversation about diversity without having a conversation about inclusion. Because there are some spaces where diversity exists, but we practice exclusion, right? You get the people in the door, you tokenize the hell out of them, and then you leave them hanging and don't promote them, and they fall off the job, or you restrict them while they're there. That's why you need to have a conversation about inclusion. So what is inclusion? Inclusion is about creating a space where you have openness, belonging, respect, and you have created an equitable opportunity for people to show up and have an impact in the workplace in a meaningful way. Now, you have to have different policies and practices to be able to do that. And that's what inclusion is. And then you can't have a conversation about diversity and inclusion without thinking about equity. That's fairness. Remember, when I was talking about inclusion, I even mentioned equitable opportunity. Equitable opportunity means that it's fair and it's accessible for everyone. The difference between equity and equality is that equity is about fairness, equality is about sameness. Now, you can treat everybody the same, but in order to do that, you have to have fair practices, which means you might have to treat them differently in order to get to equality. Okay, you don't get equality without equity. You need equity first. Now, when I say that equity is about fairness, the way that we measure that is through accountability systems. So how do you measure whether or not people are being treated well in the workplace? What kind of policies and practices do you have set up in order to ensure that equity is happening? Right? It's about building systems to perpetuate fairness, to make sure that diverse populations are included in the workplace. You see how I spit that out? You don't get the D without the E, without the I. Do y'all remember in 2017, Denise Young-Smith, the Chief Diversity Officer of Apple, what she did when she went to Bogota, Colombia? Anybody? She went into that conference, she set herself on that stage, and she said that there could be a room full of white men, and they can have diversity. And she was right. There's some truth to that. There's some facts to that. There's also some extreme gaps within that. Because when you talk about diversity, you can't have the conversation about it without the inclusion. And the part that she missed, her biggest mistake, is that she forgot to talk about the fact that a room could have diversity in it and still be exclusive. And you can't have a conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion without thinking about the visible and invisible diversities that exist. If only one visible diversity exists, that is homogenous. You see, you have to break diversity down within components to understand that homogeneity can exist on every level of your identity. And that's where she missed the mark, because that was an exclusive state because it didn't take into account the different identities that may not be in the room and why they're not there. And I think that's why the world got so pissed off, and they had the right to be. So that's the T on DEI. Y'all got it? Don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel. Look below in the comment section. I'm Dr. CI, the proud CEO and founder of Diverse City, and I'm here learning and growing and sharing with y'all. We got a great lineup of different speakers coming to talk to you this season. So y'all make sure to subscribe, give us some feedback, and let us know how we can work with you to make the world a better place.
Chuck, I just have to say it wasn't like the best quality. I don't know if that's how everybody saw it, but it was definitely not completely easy to understand the whole time as far as internet.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the the audio on their video itself, because she's in a warehouse, the microphone that they used is a little bit sketchy. I think the next one will be better. Thank you, Molly. I'm sorry for the audio problems. I think Cati, this one, you want to discuss this?
Cati, you're muted.
Yes, so we did want to have a quick discussion about the video, but if you were all had a hard time hearing the video, it might not be as easy to have that conversation. Is there anything that anyone would like to share specifically about diversity, equity, and inclusion, or their definition of equity, or is there any questions that anyone has about diversity, equity, inclusion, and making that a priority? We can answer those now, since I'm not sure that you all heard everything that was in the video.
I have a question. The question about policy for inclusion, I'm just curious how to develop that beyond the basic federal mandates that we're under and looking at any obstacles to promotions, training, etc. Those seem pretty commonplace, but how do you build a policy approach to inclusion?
You want to take that, Chuck, or I can if you like?
Well, I can, I mean, so you can, a lot of it, there's a lot of I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on HR matters, but there is a lot of information available online when it comes to inclusion policies. But what's important is that, again, when you develop an inclusion policy, you're considering whose voices are missing in that discussion, and why are they missing, and how do you bring those voices into that discussion to create an inclusive environment and experience, both within your workplace and then obviously when you're recruiting for hiring. And we'll discuss a little bit more of that a little later on.
Right, and I would also add too that we do have resources available through our ongoing learning working group who can take a look at workplace policies or even help draft one if necessary. So there are resources available to you in order to do that, so you don't have to go in it not understanding what those full policies are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
And so let's go to the next slide, shall we?
So actually, I'm going to try this. Can everyone still see the screen? I'm going to see if the, rather than the link, see if it's just a little bit better audio this way.
And if you have problems with the sound, feel free to put it in the chat and we can always stop it and we can have the conversation rather than the video.
I'm Dr. Ci, the CEO of Diversity, and I'm season 4 of our learning series. This year we changed it up for y'all and decided to bring some scenario-based learning today. We're going to show you skits based on issues that surround.
No, that one's like really bad. I can't even hear her.
Okay. Let me try it another way. Let me go back to the slides, please. Hold on just a second.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to season 4 of our learning series. I'm Dr. Ci, the CEO of Diversity, and I'm back in the building, kicking off season 4 of our learning series. This year, we changed it up for y'all and decided to bring some scenario-based learning to the table. We're going to show you skits based on issues that surround diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, and give you solutions in order to address discrimination in the moment. So without further ado, let's get into it. This room looks familiar to y'all. It's the interview room where candidates go to explain why they are the best person for the job, and many panels practice biases in the selection process. You might be asking, how does bias show up in an interview process? Well, pay attention to this skit.
I thought Jamal was a decent candidate. I mean, he certainly has all the qualifications, as does Jim. But there's something about the qualities that Jim has that I think make him more of a culture fit. You know what I mean?
First of all, bias number 1 is that companies should be focusing on cultural addition versus cultural fit. Cultural fit requires you to fit people into a culture, like a box. When you instead should be adding diversity in order to expand inclusion in your culture. Carry on.
You know, I can't really see myself going out to a bar or having a beer with Jamal after work.
The candidate is here to do a job, not be your damn drinking buddy, George. Get it together.
It sounds like both candidates are qualified, but we know who we want. I'll call Jim tomorrow and offer him the role. Okay?
Wonderful.
Do you recognize the biases that are happening here? Affinity bias shows that people are more likely to select candidates that look like them and that they have things in common with. This is why you need visible and invisible diverse interview selection panels. Let's take a glimpse at what that means.
I thought Jamal was a decent candidate. He had all the qualifications, as did Jim. But I don't know. There's something about the qualities that Jim has that makes him seem like more of a good culture fit.
Wait, hold on a second. What part of our culture is that Jamal doesn't fit into?
I mean, our values are diversity, inclusion, kindness, knowledge, and respect, right? Both candidates exhibited those.
Right, but which candidate would you more likely want to go out with after work and have a beer?
Well, I prefer to judge a candidate on which candidate would be more likely to help me complete a project. We shouldn't be judging candidates on our social expectations. That's not fair.
How about this? Both candidates seem really qualified. How about we bring them both back in for a final interview, give them an assessment, and decide based on competence level?
I like that idea. There it is.
Me too.
Do you see the difference in each panel? By bringing underrepresented employees into your interview process, it shows that you're committed to different points of view and opinions. It helps to minimize bias in your selection process and give candidates a fair chance. You should be asking all the candidates the same questions and conducting structured interviews based on technical competencies that align with the job role. Bringing in people from different backgrounds shows your commitment to diversity and inclusion and can increase your company's diversity. Make sure to post in the comments and tell us about a time where you experienced something similar. Thank y'all for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share our video.
Okay, so I'm just going to go over, these are some of the obvious ways that you can reduce hiring biases. Number one, build capacity and awareness on the staff who is going to be reviewing and interviewing people around what their biases may be. And there's explicit and implicit bias. And we have some material that can be shared with that and help you with that at the end of this. Check the language in your job descriptions. Blind the resume review process. And what that would mean is remove the name, age, and gender before the resumes are reviewed so that you can help eliminate some of those implicit bias. And use only validated assessments. So you're going to have an interview process or a resume assessment process that is standardized and well thought out for every single candidate and with no deviations. You're going to standardize the interviews. We'll provide a link to a standardized interview at the end of this as well. That again, every interview is the same questions are asked, and as much as possible, conscious evaluations are given only on those questions. Be aware of bias towards likability. That implicit bias is something that you're mostly unconscious of. Explicit is something you're conscious of. You may find yourself leaning forward at the interview table, putting your arms out. Your body language will be more welcoming, or you may find yourself leaning back at the interview table. You know, and why is that? What's going on? Is it because those people look like you, because they talk like you? They maybe have an educational background like yourself. So those are all things that can lead to bias in hiring and sorting out your applicants. Implement a collective and collaborative hiring process. So within certain limits, you know, it's important to include, if possible, diversity, if you have diversity, on your hiring team and your interview team. And then also exercise that as you're looking at the interview assessments. And just acknowledge that confirmation bias.
One thing that I saw in the chat that Danette asked was, what do you mean by checking the language in job descriptions? And what has been found with researching job descriptions and has basically that some job descriptions are actually not necessarily consciously designed to attract more male identified gender folks or female folks who identify as female. So even when it comes down to the language of the job descriptions, even including something like English speaking is preferred, if it's not something that is absolutely required for the job, it's something that you actually should leave off in order to create a better hiring pool. Language like using the word, which we're going to speak a little bit later, is say like you use a word that's create. Females tend to gravitate to those kind of words. and folks who identify as male tend to gravitate towards like build. So even down to the language that you use in your job descriptions, it could make a difference in who you're attracting for those positions. And that could be gender, that could be race, that could be ethnicity. And there are actual systems out there where you can plug in a job description and you can gauge if it's geared to someone who identifies as female or male. And there are tools out there that you can use to actually improve that language a bit. Chuck, do you want to add anything there?
Sure, yeah, and I put the link into one of those tools towards the end of our presentation. And also it's like Humboldt Area Foundation reviewed their job descriptions when they posted them, and they changed the wording of the job descriptions, and rather than making them really didactic, they actually reviewed them for language for bias in terms of gender and racial bias. And then they described what a typical day would be rather than listing the skill sets within that day. And they found that they almost by a third got more applicants just by being conscious of what how the language they used and what that language was in their job descriptions. So if you're going to have any staff, or what staff, or even if it's you, review resumes, conduct interviews, or onboard new hires, they at least take this test and receive ongoing, excuse me, implicit, explicit bias training to reduce harm to potential BIPOC, and that is Black, Indigenous, people of color employees. And if for those of you who haven't taken this, it's fascinating. It's the Harvard implicit bias test. It's about 10 minutes. And it's very interesting and illuminating in terms of where your bias might be.
I think one thing to note too, Chuck, is that does everyone know what implicit bias is here? If you don't, please, it's okay. If you're not aware of what it is, essentially, it is a bias that you have that is unconscious. It's something that you may not even be aware of. And it's something that we all have. So it's not something that you should, look at as, oh gosh, do I have this? Is this, some awful thing? No, this is something that we all have. And the more we are aware of it and the more we can identify it within ourselves and also within our organizations, the more we can go, oh, okay, is this my bias, which is helping me inform these decisions? Or am I actually making these decisions based on the merit of this other person or this situation? So it's something that I would encourage folks to learn more about as far as bias goes, especially within the workplace. It's very important. So go ahead, Chuck.
And we also have some links to some other sessions that Welcoming Businesses have done as well. I think Cati, this one is for you.
Yes, so there are 8 conditions for successfully fostering a diverse and inclusive workspace. And essentially the first one really is that leadership must accept and value that a diverse workforce will bring multiple perspectives and approaches to the work that you're doing. And this could be in a large company or this could be in a small business. But the more voices and the more experiences employees bring to the table, the more informed your decisions will be in whatever decisions they are, essentially, when it comes to your business. And leadership must also be committed to persevering in the face of inherent challenges that these different perspectives and approaches do bring to an organization. A lot of folks tend to think, oh, we'll hire people who look like me or who have similar experiences to mine. And what you actually end up with, which is a lot of people who say yes and you kind of go about, but it's really maintaining the status quo. But when you have multiple perspectives and a diverse staff and diverse employees to work with, really, you are going to come across challenges because not everyone's going to agree with you and people are going to share other experiences. But this actually helps build a stronger workforce because people are more open to those ideas. But in order to have that diverse workforce, you actually have to be open to those in the workplace. And that's why policies in place that highlight this is important to my business really is something that BIPOC folks who are looking for a job or looking for an organization to be involved with, they're going to look for those things. There also must be an expectation for a high performance from everyone. So it can't just be the BIPOC folks or the Black, Indigenous, and other people of color in the workplace who are doing that work. It has to be everybody participating in that. And an organization should also design jobs that allow people to grow and be educated. So that's also important when you're looking to hiring folks, like you want that growth. And it's also important for employee retention to offer those growth opportunities. The fifth condition is openness and tolerance for debate must be encouraged by the organizational culture. And all workers must be made to feel valued and empowered. And the organization or business must have a clear and well-organized purpose that includes diversity. And the organization also must be structured to promote the exchange of ideas and welcome constructive challenges as a part of your work culture. So if you're not seeing that in your workplace, it's good to think about how you can make those changes to create a more successful, diverse, and inclusive workplace, which can be challenging in Humboldt County because we are very white in Humboldt County, and diversifying employees can be a challenge, but it doesn't have to be.
Thank you, Cati. So some support strategies, and I like reading these, and of course, please read along, but it gives us an opportunity to hear them for people who learn by listening. So employees of color and predominantly white organizations face a great deal of social isolation and bias within the workplace. It's important to be cognizant of the unique strengths that each employee of color has, the challenges they may face in the workplace, and methods to support them. So these strategies that I'm going to be talking about, it's extremely important that, and it's going to be most effective, that those people within the organization that hold power understand and support these strategies so that they can be implemented in all aspects of the organization. So one is build trust. Be open to learning about your employees and their perspective and worldview on sustainability and environmental issues. Be willing to engage on uncomfortable topics, which may include race. Be willing to receive feedback and provide clear feedback on performance. Identify interests. Know what the employee wants to learn and be exposed to. For interns, you develop goals that are both work-oriented and experience-oriented for their short term of employment. Avoid putting a BIPOC, which is a Black, Indigenous, person of color, employee in the position to be the sole educator on race. That's racial taxation, and that creates a very hostile work environment. So you need to normalize learning about institutional bias and racism, including self-reflection about one's relationship to these systems. Excuse me. If an employee is drawn to work on diversity and equity, sponsor their participation by endorsing it and supporting them to find balance in their work. Be careful that they're doing the work with sufficient time and resources and with a group of collaborators to avoid burnout and frustration. Don't press involvement if the interest isn't clear. Check in regularly on the experience your employees are having and understand what they feel and what they need to be successful. Work to identify when dominant culture is impacting the ability of an employee to effectively participate, contribute, or be accepted in the workplace. Example, the communication styles that favor linear presentation as opposed to nonlinear, taking turns versus jumping in to voice an opinion, responses to showing of different kinds of emotion, defensive responses to bringing up cultural blind spots. So, and to expound on that a little bit more, sometimes it's really easy for, I found it to be useful if you're going to have a meeting, if you center BIPOC voices first in the meeting. if you center, if it's a predominantly male or it's led by someone who identifies as male in the organization, if you also center female voices first in the meeting. And when you have meetings, staff meetings, it's a fascinating, and I think it would be very interesting to all of you to appoint someone a timekeeper, ask someone to keep time if you don't do it yourself. Who's taking up the most time speaking by gender and by race? And that's very illuminating, and it will give you feedback on how you can change that. Normalize self-care, especially when a traumatic event has happened or when there's a triggering environment. We're all living through triggering environments right now, and it's particularly difficult and triggering for BIPOC community members. So honoring that, acknowledging it, and then creating space for them to process it collectively or individually is going to be really important. And support professional development, help the employee seek out and participate in opportunities for training and professional growth. So, and coming to inclusive job descriptions, highlight your company's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. Avoid gender or racially coded words. And Cati spoke to this a little bit, like male coded words are ambitious, assertive. Female coded would be interpersonal or collaborative. Racially coded would be clear cut or strong English skills. And you'll see a link here, this gender decoder. You can put your job description. If you click on the link, you can then put your job description into that website, and it will highlight gender bias words. Unfortunately, it's not racially coded words, but at least gender bias words. Limit the job requirements to must-haves. Avoid unneeded jargon. Mention your inclusive benefits. And so going back to, how do you include all members of your workforce and the team you hope to build? And how do you support that inclusivity? Recruit from diverse talent sources. We'll be speaking to that in a few minutes. And then advertise through diverse channels. Any questions so far? Okay. So here's some ongoing learning resources. Race in the Workplace article. It's actually 3 videos by Time Magazine, and it's each one's about 45, 50 minutes. It's kind of a deeper dive. Equity Arcata teams. So these are different teams on Equity Arcata. There's an Equity Arcata newsletter on implicit bias. There's one on explicit bias. There's employee resources for writing inclusive job descriptions. And this is the interview tool where you can plug in your job description and help them actually, and it'll identify those. And then also this is a candidate evaluation form, which, sorry, I read that wrong. And that form I would encourage all of you to look at that form and take a close look at it. The reason it's included here is it's a standardized form that you can use when you're interviewing candidates, so that those of you who aren't doing this, every candidate is answering the same questions and is completely objectively being scrutinized or evaluated on standard questions.
And to answer a question in the chat, Chuck,
yes.
We are going to have this presentation up on the Equity Arcata website following this presentation. So you can go here and find all those links, so you don't have to write them down, and they'll be easy to access, and that will be on our resources page.
Thank you. Cati, I think this one is yours, please.
All right. So as far as local recruiting opportunities go, we also, we want to encourage folks who are recruiting to reach out to some resources available here. Reach out to HSU Social Justice, Equity and Inclusion Center, the HSU Native American Center, or ITEP. Central del Pueblo is a wonderful resource, and also the North Coast Small Business Development Center. And I'll go on to the next slide. The HSU Cultural Centers for Academic Excellence and the African American Center for Academic Excellence and the El Centro Académico Cultural on campus all are wonderful resources to, shoot an email to these sources here and say, hey, we have an opportunity. Do you know of anyone? Do you have any students? Do you have any grad students? Because we have a lot of talented, diverse folks here in Arcata. And I think it's important to do that kind of outreach, and the cultural centers on campus can definitely link you with those, as can other organizations. But there are also, of course, databases and national recruiting firms that you can hire to recruit outside of the area as well.
So we have the closing reflections. And we're kind of going to open this up a little bit for folks. What resonated for you today? What didn't? You can tell us verbally. You can put it in the chat. What topics are you interested in the future? And we want to let you know that we'll be presenting an 8-hour learning session in December. It will be broken into 4 2-hour segments. It's called the 4 Pillars of Racism. And I would recommend that for those of you who have the staff bandwidth to carve out those sessions. And then this particular program, we can offer this to any of your team members as needed on a one-to-one, and we can do a little bit deeper dive in terms of resources available and having deeper conversations around it. So I'm just going to open things up for folks.
So can you stop the screen share for a second?
Can do.
So are there any questions that anyone has that maybe haven't been answered, or anything that you would like to learn more about recruiting or retention or job descriptions as far as creating an equitable environment for employees go?
I've got a question. Sorry, this is Ken Hammock. I'm sorry I'm late in the meeting, just got out. Cati, on that last piece that you just presented on about recruitment and outside recruitment, I'm curious, are there any recruitment organizations in Humboldt that seek candidates outside of Humboldt, but they're located in Humboldt?
That's an excellent question. I know there are some, but I'm not sure which specific ones there are. But I can find that out and get back to you, Ken.
Okay.
And is anyone else interested in learning that as well? Okay. All right. I'll get that to you, Ken. Any other questions just about any of the concepts that were brought up here? Hi, Carol.
I have a question. How do we get a list, like you provided a helpful list of places to do recruiting for diverse candidates? How do we get a hold of that list?
Sure. I'm going to put this presentation that Chuck shared up on the Equity Arcata website. If you go under the resources category and click general resources, all of the workplace resources will be listed there. And so that will be done shortly.
I can also email out, Cati, if you want to email me stuff, I can email it out to all the attendees as well, if that is helpful for people.
I can do that.
And I have one other question, reflection. I've been to a number of, classes at Equity Alliance and about racial bias and so on. And I'm just wondering, I do think it's so important that we all have a common language and can have some basics under our belt. If there might be some really helpful prerequisite tools you could get attendees to take before they attend a workshop where you can dive in a little deeper, because I may have thought we might have spent more time specifically on recruitment, even though I think all the information you provided was excellent and very important for everybody. It's just a challenge I have found in other workshops as well. And it seems like making sure that everybody passed a certain tool might be one way to make sure people have that under their belts.
No, thank you for that suggestion. We'll definitely incorporate that on the next one.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. And again, if you, any of the organizations that you work with, Equity Arcata and myself and Cati, we'd be happy, and we've done this for other businesses, to have a one-on-one where we can have a much deeper discussion about these things and come, and show up with a presentation, a learning session about bias, about microaggressions, explicit, implicit bias, any number of those things, or recruitment.
Is that a service you provide for a fee, like a consulting team, or?
No, we do it for free.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome.
And what we can also do is, if you have recruiting materials that you would like us to take a look at with a more racial equity lens, we can also do that for your organizations and businesses, just to have that set of eyes. If you're not as aware of the language, or if you haven't studied these concepts a lot, sometimes it's easy to miss things. And even for Chuck and myself, who've done this work and who've studied these things, we're still going to make mistakes and miss things. So it's always nice to have another set of eyes, but we do provide that in Equity Arcata. And there are also consulting firms that you can hire to do that, but that's something that we can also provide if that's something that you're interested in.
Just a real quick question. How are you guys funded? I don't even know.
We are, we're essentially a partnership from Humboldt State University and the city of Arcata. So funding is pooled that way. We are hoping to raise more funds for the organization soon, but we do like offering these things for free for community members, and we're volunteer based. So we essentially give our time because we see this need in the community and we want to do this work. So we're here to provide those services free, because really that is the equitable thing to do. But we'll let you know when we are raising funds, so Ken.
For me, it's like for those of you who have been in Humboldt County for a while, you probably all know people who went to HSU and loved it and stayed here. I would venture to say that probably a lot of those people are probably identify as white. So part of the reason I'm here today and the reason I do this work is my vision is that, HSU is now a minority serving school, a university. It's recognized by the state system as such. And what would it look like if more and more students who went to HSU and graduated and who identified from the BIPOC community loved it here and felt welcome here and stayed here? We develop a more diverse, both culturally and racial community. And the reason that a lot of you here, because you're consultants, you have a business or a nonprofit, part of that process is diversifying your employment pool and diversifying your employees, so that when people from campus go off campus and go shopping or interact with nonprofits or just go out into the community, they see people like them who identify and look like themselves. And it becomes a self-perpetuating, self-supporting growth cycle to create deeper diversity and compassion and understanding in the community. So that's my long-term vision.
Right. And I think it's also important to note that the Welcoming Businesses Working Group really was formed because after several focus groups and work being done by the city of Arcata and folks on HSU campus and other local business owners, after about a year's worth of breakout sessions, feedback that consistently came back from BIPOC community members here in Arcata was that they weren't always feeling welcome in Arcata's businesses. And if folks aren't feeling welcome to go into those businesses, I mean, how are they going to be feeling as employees in those businesses? So it's something that, like, for me is really important, because I want folks to feel welcome in our community. And I think that we all have the responsibility as folks who live here to create that environment. And it's really wonderful to be able to speak to you all. And it's nice to see this interest in all of your businesses for DEI work. And please reach out to us if you have any questions. I mean, we're all really learning in this process, but we're here to offer those resources and help out however we can.
And just thank you, Cati. And just in one last thing to be really deeply mindful of is that when you consider diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is not, and I would not encourage anyone to just go out and say, wow, we need more diversity and hire someone from the BIPOC community without building a culture at work that supports them. Because the harm that you would do to that person in terms of their experience working for you could alter your success moving forward in the future if they were to leave because they felt unwelcome or they felt microaggressed, and you didn't build the culture within your organization first. So the first thing I recommend and ask people is to please do no harm as you move through this process. So how to contact us? There's my name, my email, and Cati's email, and you can visit us at equityarcata.com, where you'll be able to get this presentation and the resources on it. So it's 5:35. Just want to be mindful of time. So any further comments, anyone?
Chuck, tell us when, so these are regular meetings, and I forget if it's the third or fourth Wednesday. I don't know if we changed it.
Thank you, Molly. So the third Wednesday of each month, Cati and I put on a learning session devoted to supporting businesses and business owners and decision makers in nonprofit organizations as well. And so what we can do is get the email list from people who signed up from Molly, and I will make sure to send all of you an invite for our next session.
Yeah, and we've been having some good meetings every month, and the topics change, and I encourage everybody to be part of these meetings and other working groups through Equity Arcata, which is all on their website. And I think, the more we grow this community of people working on this, the more change we'll see. So yes, thank you so much, Cati and Chuck, for being here. Your knowledge is always so helpful. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, if they need to get more contact information, you should have my information if you didn't get to write down Cati's or Chuck's. But yeah, you should be able to find Equity Arcata on the website there. Any other final thoughts or comments, anyone?
Yeah, thank you very much for the information. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. And it's hard sometimes to take an hour out of your day that's dedicated to equity work. And I just want to say thank you all for taking the time and having the interest. It really does make a difference. And you'll see that it does make a difference in your businesses as well.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the meeting. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Molly, can you leave us? Oh, Cati left too. Okay, bye-bye. Thanks, Molly.
Bye.